Now this morning, we have people getting baptized, but we have a new person to our speaking team. She's not new to our church. She's been on our staff for 18 years. And if you've been around any length of time at all, you have heard Angela laugh, correct? Yes, okay. She is an amazingly gifted communicator with a very infectious spirit and one of the most dedicated followers of Jesus I know anywhere. Would you welcome to our stage Angela Lamb?
Well, that is incredibly hard to follow. I don't have a lengthy bio to have all kinds of resume that I've got to follow up with, but infectious spirit, does he not know I have nerves up here? I think, is this a hint from the production team that I sweat out in first service and I might need some help? Oh, good morning. I am Angela, and I have spoken a couple of times at New Life in my 18 years, but I try to make that minimal because my nerves get really going. So if you could help me, thank you. Apparently that wasn't a hint. If you could help me break that rule where we pretend that I am up here and that I can't see you, I can see you. Would you just wave back at me to remind me that we are friends and it is okay? Hello. Good morning. Good morning. So we are in a series called Bottom of the Ninth, which is the idea is life throws us curveballs. That's also a baseball analogy. Life throws us curveballs, and often we get into a situation where it looks like all hope is lost, and we are praying for some kind of a comeback story. So if you don't know me, my name is Angela, and I am married to Jason Lamb. And Jason is one of those baseball fans. He is the guy that plans his week around the games that he wants to watch or the fantasy draft that he needs to be real time with. I'm not sure how that works, but it's important, and it's a specific day. And we plan our vacations around what ballparks we can visit during what times of year. And we went to the Baseball Hall of Fame on our honeymoon. Whoop, whoop. So when Ron and I were in the planning stages of this series, I thought I can earn some serious brownie points by having it be baseball themed. Like, that is going to work wonders on my marriage. For those of you that are in a relationship with one of those kinds of fans, I'm just going to give you a tip. Are you aware that sports talk radio can seriously help your relationship? A couple of minutes on the way home from work affords me the opportunity to sit down to the dinner table and say, honey, how do you think Ronald Acuna is going to do in the playoffs? I mean, it's his rookie year, and he's held it pretty well, but that's a lot of pressure. Okay, but one other tip. Sports talk radio is incredible, but 20-minute diatribe about Ronald Acuna is coming right after you say that sentence. So you have to be able to back up that little gem with a whole lot of, oh, wow, oh, I didn't know. And then he's putty in your hands. I mean, it's brilliant. So anyway, I am a baseball fan by proxy for 9 years now and have come to greatly respect this wonderful sport. And I love the way that it translates to what we're talking about. We wanted to talk about how to be okay when things are not okay. And this analogy of a bottom of the ninth. For those of you that don't know baseball, bottom of the ninth would be 3 outs. They have 3 more chances to have the great comeback. So in the first week, we talked about how to be okay when things are not okay. You're at the plate in life, and you're hoping to swing for the fences, but you don't know how it's going to turn out. Last week, Ron talked us through how to prepare for that moment before you get there. What things could you be participating in before you get to the bottom of the ninth so that no matter what's happening in that moment, your faith can hold steady and you're not shaking quite so bad. And that's been incredible. We love comeback stories. Part of the reason why sports fans love bottom of the ninth stories is because it's the opportunity for one of those ESPN highlight reels. We love comeback stories. So whether you're a Jesus follower or not, I would say read your Bible because it is packed full of comeback stories. Let me just give you a couple of examples. Last week, Ron told the story of Peter and his prison break. It was the night before he was supposed to be executed, and That was a beautiful comeback story. There's a story of Daniel who lived in a time of no religious freedom, and because he chose to keep praying, he was sentenced to death, and the method of execution was to be trapped in a den with a whole bunch of lions. That's a phenomenal comeback story. There's a story of a guy named Moses. When he was a baby, he lived in slavery. His entire nation was in slavery by another nation, and his mom thought his best shot at actually surviving was to put him in a basket and ship him down the river and pray for him. I can't even imagine you thinking that's your best shot. I can't even imagine. Spoiler alert, that's a beautiful comeback story, because my next comeback story is that same baby as an adult leading his entire nation out of slavery, getting them out of slavery. But they get out of the country and they get trapped between the pursuing army and a body of water. That is an incredible comeback story. There's David and Goliath, which you might be familiar with. There's a beauty queen that actually stops a genocide. There's story after story after story. Not to mention Jesus, who's like the ultimate comeback story. He was dead, and still it was a comeback story. So we love comeback stories, but this morning I actually want to talk about what happens when that third strike is called, the stadium lights go out, and the losing team walks out with their heads down. Not all of our comeback stories end victoriously. Not all heroes that we know, either in our life or the Bible stories that we read, become heroes because they had victory. There's the other side to that story. What happens at the bottom of the ninth when the game ends and it's a crushing defeat? That's what I want to talk about this morning. I'm going to use a Bible hero named Stephen, who has one of these stories. And I'm already giving you the spoiler alert. It doesn't end well. In first service, when I told this story and then I actually told how it ended, you could feel all of us like, what? I feel ripped off. So brace yourself. This story is purposefully does not end well. So Stephen, his life would have overlapped a little bit with Jesus. He would have been aware, very, very aware of the story of Jesus and how Jesus had lived. It's possible maybe he met him, but we don't really know, or I don't know. But his life would have overlapped, and he was when Jesus was on earth, he was trying to communicate to people that were not religious that there was a God that loved them, and he was trying to communicate to the group of people that were extremely religious that religion was not the answer, that actually this relationship with God, this vibrant walk with God was the answer, and switch their idea of what religion would be. And he began this movement that has lasted this long, and here we are. He began this movement. So Stephen was part of the church leadership when Jesus left earth and they started to make churches out of these groups of people who had joined this movement. But the religious people that Jesus had been trying to convince, hey, religion is not the answer, were very upset about this movement and were trying to squash it out all over the place. So Stephen was part of this underground movement that was becoming above ground, and he was a leader in the churches. The description that the Bible gives about Stephen, when I read it, I always think, oh, that's a really good guy. And I'm probably a little bit biased because for those of you that know my story with Jason, we were best friends 17 years, but I had him squarely friend-zoned. Are you familiar with that phrase? Do you know what that means? Okay, you can wave at me so you can also nod or tell me no. Do you know what friend-zone means? Okay. So I had him squarely friend-zoned for 17 years before I woke up and realized what a gem I had. When I read Stephen's story, I get the same sense. Oh, there's that poor guy. Nice guys just always finish last. I don't actually know if he was married or not, but the description that the Bible gives is he was active as a volunteer in the church movement, in church planting, and his specialty was caring for widows. And all of the moms in the audience breathed this beautiful sigh of approval. Oh, Stephen. And all of the girls in the audience think, yeah, but I wouldn't date him. Like, that's just how that goes for nice guys. Really good guy. And then we get to he becomes busy enough in the church that he is known for being part of this underground movement, and he gets arrested. And one of the things that I forget about is the fact that he would have overlapped with Jesus. He would have been keenly aware that this is the same group of people that arrested Jesus. He went to the same exact court that Jesus had been taken to. He was running through the same exact trial that Jesus had just gone through, and Jesus got executed. So Stephen gets arrested, and they take him to trial, and they lay out his accusations, and it's the same accusations that these same people brought against Jesus. And when Jesus had his turn to speak for himself, Jesus answered, "It is as you say," and he just took it on and didn't defend himself at all. I don't know what was going through Stephen's mind, but when Stephen had the opportunity to answer, here are the accusations against you, Stephen chose a different tactic. He let him have it. Let him have it. He didn't just explain himself. He went all the way back to the beginning of the story about God and basically tried to convert them to the movement. It did not go well. It did not go well. He not only defended himself, he went on the offensive, and they were very offended, very offended. So much so that they didn't even finish the trial. They did not even bother to say, okay, let's take a vote. We've heard what he had to say. They stopped him midway by getting up, rushing to him, grabbing him, and taking him outside and beginning to stone him. So this is the part of the story we're going to pick up. And as the murderous stones came hurtling at him, Stephen prayed, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. And he fell to his knees, shouting, Lord, don't charge them with this sin. And with that, he died. This is not the usual story we tell at church. This does not look like a story of great faith, like, woohoo, come back, kid. This is tragic on every level. For Stephen, for the early church, for the other people that were in this underground movement, this is a terrifying moment. Wait a second, this is one of our heroes. God is doing big things in this guy's life, and he's dead. The reason I like this story for our topic today, when we're talking about the bottom of the ninth, or actually at the end of the game, when we have experienced a crushing defeat, the reason I like it is because you can see something about Stephen here that I think, what would it take for me to be at this moment in my life and to be at such peace that I would have the ability that the thing I was shouting was not defending myself or accusing people for treating me horribly. The thing that I was shouting is, God, don't count this against them. He was not only so much at peace in his own moment that he could be in their moment, that he could actually be praying for them. Rather than praying, hey, make this stop. Where are you, God? That seems valid, that question. So I like this story to talk about what happens when we encounter one of these moments. Well, one of the things that I know is that no one in this room has been stoned. This is not our story. Maybe you have been stoned. Not ancient stoned. This kind. Just to be clear. We may not be able to empathize with this story in that sense, but we can empathize with this moment, because I don't know what your life story has been like, but if you've lived not very long at all, you have experienced some kind of crushing defeat, that the story didn't end the way that you thought it would. You were involved in a relationship that you thought was going to last your entire lifetime, or you got a medical diagnosis that it's the end of the game and you're now on countdown. Or you have years invested in sobriety, and this is the life that you have chosen for yourself, and yet you found yourself off the wagon. There's so many different ways that we experience life that isn't the comeback story that we love. Stephen, this is not his plan. This looks like the end of the story for Stephen. And in a lot of ways, it is the end of the story. I don't know if maybe he took hope, like, hey, Jesus just died and then came back from death. Maybe I'll be one of those stories. I'm not sure how he found that peace. But what I want to talk about this morning is a shared learning experience as we consider what we could be doing in our crushing defeat moments, or what we could be doing to prepare for the next time that life hands us one of those things. And if you have any temptation to think that the people that land up on this stage are somehow experts and we are spouting our brilliance onto you, let's just set that aside for a second, because one of the ways that I empathize with what Stephen is going through, it was two things I've got going on in my life right now. Jason and I are at the tail end of our journey with fertility and being able to start a family, and I don't honestly know if that's one of those beautiful comeback stories or not. I don't know. Very shortly, I will find out how that goes. So God and I are spending a lot of time talking about bottom of the ninth in that way. For those of you, sorry, this is what you get with a female pastor. Total stereotype there, but that's all right. If you've been part of our church for a while, we're going through something as a church that makes us wonder, wait, is this a bottom of the ninth moment that we will come back from? Or is this some kind of end of a story and we don't know? I very much resonate with this theme right now, how to be okay when things are not okay. So I'm not an expert up here saying this is definitely going to work for you. What I want to share is 5 things that I'm pressing into right now to carry my faith, to bolster my faith, to help me find peace when things are in question for me. And my hope is you might resonate with them, you might try them, you might share your stories with me, and we can bolster each other's faith as we go. So I've got 5 tips for us of things that I'm trying that might help when you are in your bottom of the ninth or you are at your crushing defeat. The first one is, I'm spending a lot of time contemplating God's nature. The Bible talks all about God, and you can get to know him in the pages of the Bible, but something that keeps coming up for me right now about his nature is this dueling concept that when you put them together, if you separate them out, it's not that, well, it's good, but it's not that powerful. When you put them together, it's pretty incredible. It's the idea that God is both all good and all powerful. If you have just an all-good God, I might be able to feel great affection for that guy. He might be able to provide me comfort. But in the end, it sort of ends up, if he's not all-powerful, it ends up like a Santa Claus God, that I feel great affection for him, but I can really only get comfort. He can't give me hope because he's impotent to actually fix my problems or write a new story. If I have an all-powerful God, but he's not all good, then the question is, well, sure, he's good enough, he's big enough and powerful enough to fix my problems, but what if he isn't working in my best interests? What if there is a solution that he has, but I take it in the shorts? He can fix it, but if he's not all good, I have an equally big problem. I need a God that I can both feel safe with and affection and comfort, but I need hope and I need trust. I need to be able to respect him. So I've spent a ton of time recently pressing into this concept that the nature of God is both all good and all powerful. And when you put those together, there is somebody that I can actually count on in my bottom of the ninth moment. Secondly, it pushes right into tip number 2. Tip number 2 is considering that God is God. You and I look at our problems and we see our human solutions. And we see lots of limitations. We have experienced all kinds of heartbreak or our own limitations. So when we look at a problem, we tend to see, well, that's not going to fix it, that's not going to fix it, and the question hangs out, what is going to work? I have somebody in my life that pushes me in this all the time. The way he thinks, I would consider myself an out-of-the-box thinker. This guy is like, breaks the mold. He drops all of his assumptions. So if I present a problem to him, he comes at it from a side that I would never think of because he has dropped all assumptions and can think completely outside of the box. He happens to be my 13-year-old nephew, Silas. And I see God in Silas. When I look at my problems and I wonder, how in the world is this coming out? I can picture God, and I hope God's not offended by this, but Silas is made in God's image, so it probably is fine. But I picture, well, gosh, it's Silas on steroids, right? If Silas was going to look at my problems, he's going to come up with solutions that me and my adult brain and my assumptions would rule out. And Silas is like, well, why don't we just that? And he says it just like, well, why don't we just that? It's like so obvious to him. God is God, and with an infinite God comes infinite solutions. God doesn't look at our problems and scratch his head like, I wonder how I am going to get around that. Those stories that I mentioned this morning, using a beauty queen to stop a genocide, that's out of the box. Like, that is out of the box. Being able to somehow save a baby's life by putting him in a basket and sending him down a crocodile-infested river, God is out of the box and not limited by our solutions. So I've spent a ton of time recently pressing into expanding the possibilities and believing in the bigness of God. And straight out of the first one, which is God is all good and God is all powerful, and then God has infinite solutions as well, my third tip, I know what my third tip is. Oh, Romans 8:28. Romans 8:28. My third tip is to look for the promises of God, the silver lining. This is one of my favorite Bible verses from childhood. And we know that in all things, bottom of the ninth moments, crushing defeat moments, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purposes. As a kid growing up, the part of me that resonated with fairy tales really resonated with this Bible verse. But this Bible verse holds no power unless the person that is promising this can actually deliver it. If I was to say to you, don't worry, I see the problem that you've got, I'd love to partner with you, I promise it'll all come out for your good. You can trust my motives, but you can't trust my capability to make that promise. That promise, you can't really lean into that much, except for a sense of camaraderie. But when you know an all-good and all-powerful God with infinite solutions makes a promise like this, partnering your life up with him is a game changer. So considering, as I look at my problems, or I wonder how things are going to turn out, and I consider what the solutions are, some of what I have been pressing into is this kind of God and this kind of promise. That even if my story doesn't end with fertility the way that I want it to end, somehow my all-good and all-powerful God has the ability to turn that for my good, and that brings me comfort, both preemptively and then also the lens of time. There's so many things I can look back, and I would imagine you're similar as well. You can look back on things in your life that at the time felt like crushing defeats, but in the lens of time, you have the ability to see that worked out for me. That was actually in my best interest, or nothing good should have come out of that, but something good did come out of that. Pressing into those memories is incredibly powerful in both preparing for our bottom of the ninth moment, but also leaning in mid-bottom of the ninth moment, which leads me to tip number 4, fueling our faith. I don't know if you stop and think about it, but my faith, and I think your faith, functions a lot like a receptacle that I'm pouring things into. Life demands faith out of me. I assume it does the same thing for you. We encounter things that demands us to have faith. And it's like there's a withdrawal out of that receptacle. I have learned that the more I pour into, the more I feed my faith, I have more resilience when life hits. I have more ability to roll with it and not lose my faith because I've been fueling it. So things like reading my Bible that tells me all of these ways that God is big and infinite and good and powerful, all of those stories that I mentioned, those are things that fuel my faith. If I'm being perfectly honest, I can make eye contact with people in this audience who have fueled my faith. Ways that you have pressed into God, ways that you have taken risks, ways that you have had comeback stories, ways that you have handled crushing defeats. You guys fuel my faith. Get to know each other if you don't already. This is an incredible church to be a part of for this kind of thing. I made a little flyer for you that is at the back table if you would like it on your way out the door. It just says Fuel Your Faith. It gives 3 of my favorite books that have seriously fueled my faith. 2 of them are about rewriting your narrative about God, that some of us have trouble leaning into that Romans 8:28 promise because the view that we have of God is of a judge who is waiting to catch you, or is telling you to hurry up and get your acts together. When God describes himself as a father, I needed help fueling my faith by rewriting my narrative about who God was, that I couldn't say these things about him for myself. I could see other Christians who thought about God that way, but I couldn't actually lean into that faith because I had a narrative about God that wasn't safe for me. So a couple of the books are about rewriting that picture that you have of God, painting in a picture. And then I also gave the addresses, the Bible addresses, for those stories that I referenced this morning, just to get you started if you're not familiar with your Bible. So our ability to lean into faith and to find comfort and to be okay when things are not okay or when we're experiencing a crushing defeat is oftentimes a result of whatever we have poured in before that moment. But the good news about this concept of fueling your faith is it doesn't matter if you are brand new to your faith. It doesn't matter if you are just now starting to ask questions about who God might be and you happen to be at the same time experiencing a crushing defeat. You could start fueling your faith now. Starting today, starting this week, you have the ability to start doing it, something fully in your control. And in these crushing moments of defeat, doesn't it feel like life is out of our control? That there's nothing we can do to write this into a comeback story? I love the fact that I have control over fueling my own faith, which leads me to my last tip about Stephen. I want to take one lesson specifically out of Stephen's life. How is it that Stephen could sit in that moment in peace and be okay? And it's one of those things that the lens of time. I hope that Stephen could feel peace in that moment because he knew this principle, that even when you're dead, you're not done. I have a tattoo on my neck that says legacy because I believe so much in the power of a human being not just being this body that ends when it ends. I believe that we are made up of our thoughts and our words and our relationships, and the legacy that we leave behind is a whisper of who we were in this lifetime. I believe Stephen could have peace in this moment because he had been surrounded by people that were fueling his faith to remind him that even when his story was done, his story wasn't done. Even dead, you're not done if you will partner with a God who works in this way. So Stephen's story looks like, if you were his contemporary, Stephen's story looks like a crushing defeat in that the church lost a major leader, the people that were working with him lost a friend, and it started a persecution. The ruling party that did not believe that this movement should be started began the process of serious persecution that to the Christians of that time would have looked like a crushing defeat. Not only have we lost a church leader, but now Christians are fleeing the area just to stay alive. It looked like that the movement was in serious jeopardy. However, the lens of time affords us the ability to look and see what God was doing. What ended up, the religious movement was, the religious leaders were trying to crush this movement, but it ended up completely backfiring on them. Instead of people losing their faith in fear, they held tightly to their faith and they fled the area. They ended up taking this movement all over the ancient world, all over it, purely to save their own lives. But in the end, God used it to do something much larger. I would say that is the same God that you and I are engaging with. That is the same God we are trying to get to know. That God has the ability to make your legacy last for generations, even with its crushing defeats. And sometimes, right in the crushing defeat, that is the thing that he chooses to use to make your legacy last. So I would say pressing into this idea that even when we're dead, we're not done, is part of how we fuel our faith, to be able to lean into faith rather than have our faith quake in these difficult moments. So all morning long, we've been talking about God and him being all good and all powerful, and in a very personal way talking about God. If you're in this audience and you don't know that God, either the God that I'm describing doesn't look like the God that you think you know, or you don't know that God because you're brand new in this experience, you might be tempted to think, I don't belong here. Clearly everybody has this thing, I don't belong here. And I would say, no, this is exactly where you belong. If you want to consider either rewriting your narrative about God, or if you want to get to know God for the first time, this is exactly where you belong. Here's a group of people that weekly get together to start exploring these deeper questions, but also a place to get to know other people who are exploring as well, who are on this journey. I'd like to share with you my grown-up fairy tale verse. I have changed a lot. I resonate still with fairy tales because who doesn't love those? But as an adult, I just have a different thing that I want from God. And I have found this verse that I would like to share with you this morning as you consider your interactions with God. It's 2 Chronicles 16:9. The eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth, giving strong support to those whose hearts are blameless towards him. Romans 8:28 brought me great comfort because it felt like an umbrella of safety that no matter how bad things were, God would still be working in my best interest. But as an adult, I actually don't just want safety. I really want to matter. I really want to fight against the pain that is in this life. I really want to press in, even though life is difficult. When I read this verse, I see a loving, powerful God who is my partner in life. A couple of things that I love about it. Both, it speaks to the struggle, The people that need strong support are people that are struggling. I love the fact that it doesn't feel fairy tale. It actually is like, yeah, I know, it's tough, it's rough. I can support you. I love the picture that it paints of God. And actually, I didn't know what songs we would be singing this morning, but the song that talked about reckless love, there's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There we go. It's easier when they have the music with it. The lyrics just come. But that is this concept, that God is just constantly scanning the horizon, looking for somebody. Okay, she could use support. I'm on it. Just constantly scanning the horizon. This is a God that I want to partner with. He is both a warrior, he likes the fact that I am a fighter, and he is looking for me, pursuing me. But the other thing that I like is I think we all have a tendency to think that God really likes the perfect. And it's tempting to think that blameless means perfect. But what blameless means to me is not that I don't make mistakes. Blameless means that I live clean. So I am following my conscience, I am living with integrity, but I make mistakes just like you make mistakes. And to me, blameless is not that I have made no mistakes. Blameless is living with a clean slate. That if I have wronged you, I can be blameless in front of you when I come and apologize and we make restitution. If I have let God down, I can still be blameless because I can talk to him about that and receive his forgiveness. This is not perfect. God is not running around looking to support those who already have their crap together. He is actually running around looking to support the people that are struggling, but should I not have said crap? Sorry. That's authentic. Here we are. Blameless is not perfect. I love this verse. This is grown-up, messy stuff. This is the God that is worth partnering with. If you are here this morning and you don't know this God because you have a different picture in your head, or you don't know this God because you're brand new to the concept of faith, then I want to say, this guy, partner up here. This morning is a perfect morning to start that journey, whether you just begin asking some of the difficult questions, or I'm actually going to go one step further. I'm going to dare you. I'm going to dare you in 3 different ways this morning, because why not? We have this awesome horse trough. This is for baptism, which is a ritual that started back in Jesus' day. It just symbolizes down with the old and up with a new start. This is a great morning to start. So I'd like to dare you in 3 ways. 1, I'd like to dare you to believe in this kind of love that I'm describing. We are fallible, limited lovers. But God offers this unconditional love, and you and I can discuss his sanity in that later, but the truth is it's his right to choose to love. So dare to believe that that kind of love exists. Secondly, it might be even harder. I would dare you to let that love soak in. That is our struggle, right? If I give you a gift, it doesn't create that awesomeness unless you actually receive that gift in. If you're like, no, I can't take that, it doesn't do the thing the gifts are supposed to do. If God loves us unconditionally, but we can't dare to let that love soak in, we're missing the power of the gift. So I would say, dare to believe in that kind of love. Dare to let that love soak in. And I'm going to go one step further. Dare to get a fresh start today. Today is a perfectly good day to start fresh. Sometimes that's the hardest part, that we need fresh starts more than just one time in life. This is a wonderful opportunity to get a fresh start, to partner up with the kind of God that is all good and all powerful and is looking to bring his strong support to your life. Logistically, this is a very simple ritual. There's going to be people over here that would partner with you to walk you through what to expect. One by one, people get in here. We say a prayer over them to start that life with a conversation with that God. You dunk underwater. I should go this way because that's how you will do it. You dunk underwater. You come up symbolizing a fresh start. You get a hug. Off you go. Grab your flyer to start figuring out how to fuel your faith. It's all right there. The other thing we're going to do during the same time is participate in another ancient ritual that got started in Jesus' day, which is this act of communion. Jesus came in his unconditional love to live life on earth, to experience what we experience, lived it sinlessly, gave up his life as a penalty for our sin, and then was raised from the dead. That is just they're on tables around the room, that's why I'm pointing. That is just that symbol. It's a little tiny cracker and a little cup of juice that just symbolize his physical sacrifice on our behalf. So if you want to participate in that moment of honoring him for that sacrifice, this is our weekly time to let that love soak in. I would dare you, whether you're brand new to your faith or you're long time in your faith, I know my journey has required me to press into one of those 3 dares over and over and over again. Dare to believe in that kind of love. Dare to let that love soak in, and dare to accept a fresh start. I'd like to pray and then go take communion. If you want to get baptized, come up to the front and we'll go from there. Let's pray. God, I love that as life has become more and more complex for me as an adult, that my faith has been able to be more complex, that I have learned more about you in such a way that can see that you are equal to what I am experiencing. This morning, everybody in this audience actually needs to feel that love. Everybody deserves to soak it in, and every one of us deserves fresh starts. They could be minuscule little starts that we need to forgive ourselves for something. It could be gigantic starts like beginning a new life partnered with you. But everybody in this room, in some way, shape, or form, either needs or I would say deserves to feel these 3 dares. Feel them viscerally. I pray as we sing, as we watch people get baptized, as we experience this as a community, I pray that you would be stirring in our hearts in one of those 3 ways. You know which one we need to feel. Pray that you would press that in as an invitation to us to have a conversation with you, that you would move us. It's in your son's name I pray. Amen.